It was in 1758 that the Norwich Company of Comedians moved from their old base, the White Swan Playhouse, to the recently completed new theatre. And so began the life of the largest theatre in our region. For over 250 years, this theatre has hosted drama, musicals, variety, pantomime, bingo, a fire, various renovations, and numerous owners and general managers. My guest today has been at the helm of the good ship Theatre Royal for 22 years. He is, of course, Peter Wilson.
My mother is American, was American. She grew up in New Jersey. My father was very English, grew up in Manchester, and there was a wide disparity in age. My father ran the thing called the Colombo Project shortly after I was born. So we moved to Ceylon for a couple of years where my younger brother was born, and then back to England for 6 years. And then we moved to America where he was working in the embassy first of all, then the World Bank. So we were in America between 1958 and 1966 when we came back, and I came to school in England. My maternal grandmother was an actress, and my father took me when we were in Washington to see the D'Oyly Carte Opera Company, who came with 4 of the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas, and I absolutely loved them. And for quite a long time, my mother and I would, at family gatherings, play Catashaw and Coco, and sing to anybody who would listen, "There is beauty in the bellow of the blast, there is grandeur in the growling of the gale." So I started performing there, I guess, yes. But I never really wanted to get involved in theatre. I didn't think that was going to be my life. My family is quite dynastic. My father's family is quite dynastic in the sense that it was school and Oxford, and then he became a lawyer. And I thought I was going to go into the law, but he allowed me to do English language and literature because he assumed that I would then do a conversion course of some kind and go into the law. And indeed, I got a scholarship to Lincoln's Inn, I think. But I, having grown up in America, didn't really understand the English legal system. And I never understood why they said, in order to be a lawyer, you have to eat dinners. And as you can tell, I can eat dinners like, with the best of them. That's not a problem. The real problem is understanding why. And while I was sitting at Oxford waiting to be told why, I was offered a job with the Welsh Drama Company. And that, at least, I understood. And I never looked back. I'd done a lot of review work in Oxford with, well, my major friend there was Mel Smith, and we went to Edinburgh. My friend Richard Sparks wrote a lot of material. Richard, in fact, eventually wrote the Schoolmaster sketch for Rowan Atkinson. And so I was involved with reviews in Oxford and Edinburgh during the early part of the 1970s. And I always assumed, I think in the back of my mind, that I would go into comedy. I would become a review performer like my friends. And all the work that I did at the Bush or at the Horseshoe, and I performed a couple of times at the Crucible in Sheffield, which Mel Smith directed me in, was aiming towards a review which would be done in London. There was going to be a natural successor to Monty Python and or Beyond the Fringe, and I kind of assumed that I would be part of that wave, as indeed I was exactly the right age to be. But I did a review at Hampstead with Rowan Atkinson in 1978, I think, which was hugely successful for him, largely because Richard's Schoolmaster sketch was the sketch which propelled him into superstardom. But it was catastrophic for me. Well, it's very lonely being on stage immediately after Rowan Atkinson because he is such a force of nature. I became chief executive of H.M. Tennant, which was the remnant of the Binky Beaumont empire from the 1940s and 50s. And that was fine. We general managed a couple of big musicals. And then I found The Woman in Black, the script by Stephen Malatrap from the book by Susan Hill. And while The Woman in Black was kind of settling down in the West End, my wife and I had 3 children, and we decided we wanted to bring them up outside London. And to be blunt, Norfolk was the only place we could afford. And we had distant relatives here. We came to visit, absolutely loved it. And while I was sorting out where we were going to live so I could commute back to my office in London, the job here at the Theatre Royal came up. And so I applied and came here in February of 1992. And have been here to a great extent ever since. The very first thing I did was to compile a list of the shows that had been on the stage for the last the 5 years before it had closed down in 1988-89, and rank them in terms of ticket price, the numbers of tickets sold, percentage of tickets sold, just to get some kind of feeling of what had been successful in the past to help me plan the programme for the future. And the one show which had been the most popular was a thing called a Miller tribute, which I assumed, given this was a big band area, was a tribute to Glenn Miller. But it turned out to be organised by Chris Bigsby. It was a tribute to Arthur Miller, the playwright. And what Chris had done was that he got people like Brunella Scales and Timothy West to do bits of Arthur Miller's plays. So Chris interviewed Arthur Miller on stage, and on the other side of the stage, chunks of his plays were acted out. And it sold absolutely to the rafters. And apparently my predecessor said to Bigsby, that was a really good idea. Could we do it with Shakespeare? And Chris said, well, we could. It's the interview that's really the problem.
The Norfolk Schools project has been hugely successful. You must be very pleased with that.
That came out of the Norwegian National Opera's visit with the Ring Cycle in 1997. We decided that it would be a waste of time if the only people who could experience the Ring Cycle were people who could afford to buy the tickets and had the time to spend in the theatre. So we devised the Norfolk Schools project as a means of introducing 9 and 10-year-olds essentially to the world of opera. And we've done it now twice a year, every year since 1997. And somewhere out there are kids now in their mid to late 20s who can hum sizable portions of Das Rheingold. Because the Schools project works that way. They learn the music, they learn the plots, and they learn how to write their own operas. And they come here on a Sunday afternoon, and 3 schools will perform their own 10-15-minute versions of, this coming year it's going to be The Lord of the Flies. They'll do their own version of Lord of the Flies. And then we give them vouchers good for 6 free visits to the Theatre Royal over the next 12 months. And then they come and see the real thing itself. So there are kids, they've seen Bourne, they've seen English National Ballet, they've seen all kinds of different shows here because they've got involved in the Schools project. And it's the one thing of which we are enormously proud because we devised it, we created it, we keep it going. It's enormously expensive, but it's fantastically worthwhile.
The renovations of 2007 were costly but hugely beneficial to this theatre. What difference do you feel it's made?
The city and the county very generously put £5 million towards the renovations. We had about £1.8 million in VAT rebates, and the public contributed the rest. The companies whose names you see behind me and many, many individuals put the £10 million together. And let me tell you, in terms of the money, right, in terms of the creature comforts, the job we do here is to make quite certain, if we can, that the performers get to the stage in peak condition. The dressing rooms are comfortable, they've got televisions, they've got fridges, they've got showers. We do really try to take care of the performers. By the same token, you have to take care of the public. They do need to sit down, having had as few difficulties as you can possibly manufacture. Our job is to make quite certain, as far as we can, that by the time they sit down, by the time we raise the curtain between the performers and the audience, they are both in peak condition. I like the sense of DNA that runs through Norwich. I like the buildings which were either built by or commissioned by Thomas Ivory. The Assembly House next door, the Octagon Chapel down the other side of the river, Ivory House by the bus station. I like the feeling that Norwich still remembers the past. I'm fond of St Andrew's Hall. Who could not be? It's one of the finest. St Andrews and Blackfriars constitute, I'm reliably informed, one of the finest groups of Dominican buildings in Europe. It's a matter, I think, of regret that the various business plans which have been put to funding bodies to really revive those 2 buildings has never been successful. But it's impossible to stand outside St Andrews without getting a sense of the deep, deep historical, religious roots of this city. It's a magnificent building.
So 22 years after you first came here, you've seen an enormous number of shows here in this theatre. Is there one particular night where you've thought, wow, I'm so glad I booked that show, what a great performance, I'm so glad I've seen it?
Yes, the Matthew Bourne Swan Lake. The very first time it came in the spring of 1996. It was a huge gamble. Nobody knew who Matthew was. We didn't sell all the tickets. But the show is brilliant, and I found myself in tears continually through it, because it's an extraordinarily moving and brilliant production. And that was the one where I thought, yes, this is exactly the job we should be doing.
So after 22 years, you've no doubt had a lot of letters and communication from the good people of Norwich and Norfolk. Do you have a favourite?
I think the worst letter I've ever had was from somebody who, this is quite early on, who really disliked what we were doing and preferred my predecessor, Dick Condon, and management of the theatre. And she sent me a letter of which the final sentence was, I will never again be able to enter the Theatre Royal without thinking of Dick. And I thought, I wonder whether I should put that over one of the doors of the theatre.